All right, let's dive into what is basically a legal detective story. It starts with what seems like a really simple question about an ancient ritual, but believe me, it spirals into a masterclass in logic. It's a case that shows us how actions, objects, and even our intentions are weighed on a razor's edge to figure out what is and isn't holy. So let's get into it.
So, here's how we're going to crack this case. First, we'll set the scene with the offering itself. Then, we'll jump right into the big dispute and look at the textual evidence each side is using. And just when you think you've got it figured out, boom, a plot twist, a major contradiction. We'll solve it by uncovering the incredible role of human intention. And finally, we'll see how that one key idea makes the whole picture snap into focus.
Okay, so first things first, let's set the stage. Every good mystery needs a setting, right? And ours is a very specific, very important offering that was performed every single day in the ancient temple.
So what are we talking about here? It's called the high priest's griddle-cake offering. And on the surface, the rules seem pretty straightforward. You take some fine flour, you offer half in the morning, and the other half in the evening. Simple enough. But, and this is the big but, the real puzzle is, how and when does this flour become holy in the first place? And that question, right there, is what brings us to the main event. A huge debate, all sparked by this one little detail, between two of the most brilliant scholars of their time.
So here's the question you need to keep in your head. When does this flour actually get its holy status? When is it sanctified? Can you just take the morning portion and make it holy by itself? Or do you need the entire batch, the whole shebang, to be present before you can sanctify it and then divide it?
Okay, let's meet our two main players. In this corner, you've got Rabbi Yoḥanan. He is absolutely firm. He says, nope, you cannot sanctify it in halves. You need the whole thing, period. But in the other corner, Rabbi Elazar has a much more practical take. He is basically saying, hold on, we offer it in halves, so it just makes sense that we can sanctify it in halves. Two brilliant minds, two totally opposite conclusions. So who's right?
Well, to figure that out, we've got to do what any good detective would do. Look at the evidence. And in this case, the key piece of evidence is a single verse from the Torah. Everything hinges on how you read it.
Here it is, from the book of Leviticus, and the whole debate comes down to two tiny words, half of it. Now, you and I might just read right over that, but for these scholars, oh man, every single syllable is a clue, packed with legal meaning.
So let's break down Rabbi Yoḥanan's thinking, because this is brilliant. He's all about the sequence in the verse. Look, it says a meal offering first. That's a whole complete thing, right? Then it says half of it. That little word it, that's the smoking gun for him. You can't take half of it unless there's an it to begin with. The whole thing has to exist and be holy first.
And he's got backup. There's this other ancient teaching, a baraita, that drives this point home. It points out, hey, the verse could have just said, bring half an offering. But it doesn't, does it? It very specifically says half of it. That tiny distinction is everything. It's the proof in the pudding that you have to start with a sanctified whole.
Okay, so right about now, it feels like case closed, doesn't it? Rabbi Yoḥanan's argument seems rock solid, super precise. But this is where our detective story takes a wild turn. A new piece of evidence comes to light that suggests Rabbi Yoḥanan completely contradicted himself. Yeah, the Talmud basically throws up a huge red flag and asks, whoa, hold on a second. What about that other case? Didn't this same guy, Rabbi Yoḥanan, rule the exact opposite way in a really similar situation? And here is the problem, laid out plain and simple. In our griddle-cake case, he says absolutely not, no sanctifying in halves. But in a different case with a standard offering, he says that if someone sets aside half the flour but fully intends to add the rest later, that first half is holy. I mean, what? That sounds like a flat-out contradiction. How can both of these rulings possibly be true?
So how do we solve this puzzle? Well, the key that unlocks this entire case isn't about the flour, it's not about the offering vessel, it's all about what's going on inside a person's head.
It all comes down to this amazing legal concept called da'ato lahosef, which literally means his intention is to add. Get this. The idea is that your mindset, your explicit plan to complete an action, has real-world legal power. Your intention can actually change the holy status of the object you're dealing with. It's wild, right?
And bam! There's our answer. Rabbi Yoḥanan wasn't contradicting himself at all. He was being incredibly precise. The default rule, the one he gets from the griddle-cakes, is that you can't sanctify things in parts. But a person's expressed intention to finish the job creates a powerful, specific legal exception to that rule.
And this isn't just some new idea he pulled out of thin air. The text actually points back to an older authority, Rabbi Yossi, who explained this exact principle. He said that when you have that intention to add, the very first speck of flour you put into the vessel becomes holy. Why? Because in your mind, you've already linked it to the future completed offering. Your thoughts literally forge the connection.
Okay, so now that we have the key, this idea of intention, let's go back and see how this clears everything up and helps us understand everyone's position in this big debate.
This chart just lays it out perfectly. You have Rabbi Yoḥanan, who's the nuanced one. His default is no, but he allows that intention creates an exception. Then you've got Rabbi Elazar, who's more straightforward. Yep, halves are always fine. And then we meet a third sage, Rav, who's the strictest of them all. He's just no across the board. No exceptions for intention, period.
So you might be wondering, where does Rav get this super strict rule? Well, he's a master of comparison. He looks at a whole bunch of different offerings. Some are missing oil, others are missing frankincense. And by comparing them all, he finds the common denominator. He figures, okay, some ingredients might be optional, but the one thing that is never optional is wholeness. For him, that's the single unbending rule.
So what's the big picture here? What can we take away from all this? First, you see just how precise this kind of thinking is. It lives in the fine distinctions between general rules and specific exceptions. Second, and I think this is just mind-blowing, a person's inner thoughts can have real, tangible legal consequences. And finally, we get a front-row seat to how these deep principles are formed by carefully comparing and contrasting cases to find the logic that's humming just beneath the surface.
And this whole ancient argument leaves us with a final massive question, one that echoes way beyond the walls of the temple. In our own lives, in our work, in our relationships, when does the meaning of something we do depend on the whole story, the full intention behind it? And when is it fair to judge it by its separate parts alone? It's something this ancient case really forces us to think about even today. Thanks for digging into this with me.